Hey, what up, everybody? I am Lou, and today we're going to talk about how to have Python refresh a Power BI desktop file. So in Power BI, there's a refresh button on a Power BI file, and ultimately we're going to use Python to actually make that action, right? To kind of click that refresh button to refresh it. So I'm gonna kind of show you the package that we're gonna use, kind of give you a high level overview of what it's doing. Not gonna go too details, but ultimately it's referencing another package, and I'll kind of go a brief description over that package, and then we'll go and test it out ourselves. I have a Power BI file that we could test out, so we'll play around with it, test it out, and kind of see it in action. Um, so before we get started, let me show you. So this PBIX refresher, this is a package that we're gonna be installing um, to get Python to refresh a Power BI file. Now it's actually very easy. It really is. But I'm going to touch on some basics on what it's doing, so at least you have a somewhat basic understanding. But let's go ahead and get started, and we'll test it out right quick. All right, so I have um, an empty project. So as you could tell, I do have a Power BI file in here. It's called containers report .pbix. So what I'm going to do here is, let me get my my terminal. All right, so I'm already in the file. It's called Python refresh Power BI desktop. First thing I'm going to end up doing here is create a virtual environment. So let's get that set up. So it would be Python. Oops. What the hell am I doing? I'm gonna call it env. Let's call it that. As you can tell, create a env file. Ultimately, again, if you're not familiar with virtual environments, get familiar with it, man. This is like a must known. Like, as you start developing, and especially when you start pushing stuff out to production and things of that nature, you gotta have a virtual environment, man. You have to. And the reason why, there will be times where maybe you're working, there's another project that you push out to the same server that is using different packages. And you may end up realizing that based on what you build, it may only work with this older version of the package. But this other app that you have on there works with a newer version for whatever reason. The last thing you want to do is have the main Python interpreter have all of your packages that you're installing, and then have that shared, that one interpreter shared through all your projects, because then you could have easily package conflicts where one doesn't work because it needs a newer version, but if you upgrade to the newer version, it breaks the other one. To avoid that, that's where virtual environments come in. Again, that's a whole different video, but if you're not familiar, get familiar with it. So let's go ahead and continue on. All right, so now that I got that started, got that created, let me go ahead and connect to it. Activate. All right, so I got it activated. Next, I'm going to install that PBIX refresher package. So that's pretty much what I'm doing here. So let's give it a second to finish. Come on, man. All right, cool. So now that's done. So here's the thing. What I just did right now, I installed the package PBIX refresher, and technically that's it, man. We're done. Right? Just kind of show you we are done. So if I want to use it to refresh a Power BI report, which let's go ahead and do, I'm going to call PBIX refresher, which again, it's part of my virtual environment that I created. Next, I am going to call this file, this Power BI file that I have. So let's go ahead and container report.pbix. Then I'm going to specify a no publish setting. And I think that's it. So let's go ahead and try it out. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, think of it as, to some degree, it's not moving your mouse to refresh like a specific item, but it is using it to some, like, underneath this. I don't know how to explain it properly, but you're not going to see your mouse move and click on a specific tab on top or anything. But in reality, it is using some of like that functionality where probably the best way to say it is, if you were to have this, like the way I'm running this script right now, it opened up Power BI. It should be refreshing any second now. Hopefully we don't have errors, but ultimately it should be refreshing. I don't see nothing refreshing, so it is taking a second. But let's give it a second. Nevertheless, it should be refreshing any second now. But if I'm moving my mouse and doing something else, then it doesn't work. Like, it's not going to work because it needs the mouse or nothing to actually be happening at the moment. As you can tell, my pointer disappeared. Right, I don't see my pointer. And that's probably because it got redirected up to the refresh section, and it should be refreshing again. I'm still waiting for the refresh. Oh, there it goes. It actually did get moved. Never mind. So it is controlling the pointer. It got moved to the home tab. So let's see what's happening here, guys. I think I may know what happened. Oh, there it goes. Never mind. Never mind. It just took a while. Boom. It refreshed, as we could see. And again, I'm not moving the mouse. I got my hands over here. And so never mind. You know what? I was wrong. It is moving the pointer. I don't know if you noticed, the pointer got moved, and that's where the refresh section was at. So it is controlling the mouse and it's actually clicking on the refresh button. Then it clicks on the save button. And we look at the terminal. The reason why it took a while, there is like a wait period where it's waiting a few seconds. But see, it identified Power BI window. It refreshed because it clicked on the refresh button, waiting for refresh ending. And then there's a saving, then there's the exiting, which ultimately means it's closing out. So ultimately what it did, it opened up Power BI. It clicked on the refresh button. It then hit the save button, and then it closed out. It exited out. And then you can tell the application is done. So you may wonder, well, why would I want this? I mean, can I just go into the, let me go to it, right? Can I just go into the folder and say, hey, let me go ahead and open up this Power BI report? And as it opens up, hey, let me go ahead and refresh, right? Because you can, right? Kind of what I'm doing. Let it refresh. Okay, once it's done refreshing, let me go ahead and save. And then let me go ahead and close. You could do that if you're dealing with a Power BI report that you only use. For example, like nobody else uses a Power BI report. By all means, you could do that. Where this comes in handy is more of a scenario where, let's say if you're sharing a Power BI file. Like, I want to give you a good example. Let's say the Power BI file lives on a server that nobody has access to. because only admin or certain people have access to that server, because that server, let's say, is hosting one of the main databases and so on. But let's say you have Power BI living on it as well, like desktop, and you got the Power BI file on that server. And on top of that, nobody could connect to that server. You can't connect to it externally. And again, this is a real scenario with one of my clients. I'm not going to go too detailed, but ultimately, anybody who's familiar with QuickBooks Enterprise, these applications are installed on a, let's say, a specific server, and you really cannot connect to the database, the QuickBooks Enterprise database, like from another server, another computer, like the way you do traditionally to any database. You can't do it. You could connect to the database when you're part of that same computer, that you're logged into the same computer, but besides that, you cannot just connect to it like any other database. So, but in my example, for the scenario that I'm talking about, we had a process where Power BI would open up again, kind of what we just did right now. It'll refresh. When it refreshes, it's connecting to the QuickBooks Enterprise local database that only people that are logged in have access to. And then of course it refreshes the Power BI file. The Power BI file happens to live on a OneDrive account, and also we were able to drop that into a SharePoint. So there's a few steps that we end up doing. It ends up being part of anybody. Again, if you're familiar with OneDrive ultimately under the hood is pretty much a SharePoint site to some degree. Either way, as it refreshes, it puts a fresh copy up to SharePoint. We were able to bring that file from SharePoint over to Power BI online, and of course now other people have access to that file, and they're able to see the latest version of that data. Now there's better solutions to that, like if the client decided to purchase the Power BI, not the Pro license, but kind of like the Enterprise license, which is like $5,000 a month or whatever. But in my case, the client that was a lot of money. The client didn't want to spend that much money, so we found a workaround, and that's kind of what we did. And that's just an example, right? But either way, that was a scenario that I came across, and that's what I had to do. So what I'm showing you, what I'm doing right now, this is a real scenario of what I had to do on one of my projects, and I got it to work, and it worked for me, and that's kind of what we end up doing. So now let's kind of talk a little bit more detail what it's doing. Like you kind of saw right now, I don't have no Python file. There is no Python file. Literally, what I'm doing is I'm installing this package. This package has, if I go back, exe file. By me executing the exe file, it is executing some Python code behind the scenes, and then I'm passing in my file name. That's what this is. Now you can tell my file name is part of the same folder, but I just say that it wasn't, right? Then you just specified the full direct path, and let's go ahead and do that. And if I were to do that, it would look something like this, right? Your C path, or whatever it is, and of course you have your file name, right? So that's kind of what it will be. The no publish, and let's take a look at the, let's go ahead and switch over. So if we take a look at some of the arguments, right? So we have Power BI Refresher, which is Power BI Refresher.exe, the workbook. As you could tell, I had the full pass, the file name, and then you have some arguments that you could pass in as well, like workspace. If you're trying to publish online, here's the issue with the workspace. I tried it out; it did not work for me. So there must be something. There's some conflict going on there. I haven't try to deep dive into it to figure out why it's causing that issues, but it is causing issues. Refresh timeout. So this is towards the end when it's about to be done. I have not tried that out. The two that I have tried is these. No publish, which means you do not want to publish it to a Power BI online portal. And then, of course, this other one is init wait. So this is very important on this one. I'm going to explain to you why. Just like for me, in the example that I had with my client, they had a remote server that they were paying for from whatever vendor IT vendor they were using. So they gave them a remote server, and they had very bare minimum resources. I believe it had, I can't remember honestly, like two virtual CPUs or something, and like 4 gigs of RAM. It wasn't much, right? It was pretty slim. And what happens is Power BI is a little bit more on the heavy side of resource. So every time the process, like we run the, like just opening up a Power BI file, man, like it would literally take a minute and a half, it seems like, or 2 minutes to open up. Now on my computer, it opens up pretty fairly quickly, like in seconds. For the power that they had on the server, it was taking over 2 minutes to open up the freaking Power BI file, which is crazy. Now because of that, that's where this init wait comes in, which means by default it takes 15 seconds. Then the Power BI, it gives it 15 seconds for Power BI to open up, and then as it opens up, it starts going through the actions of refresh and do all that stuff. But if you need more time, because again it's taking longer, you could change that init wait to, let's say, 300 seconds. I mean, or something like that, right? So what was 60 seconds in a minute? So 120 seconds would be 2 minutes. 180 seconds would be 3 minutes, so on and so on. So you could kind of specify if you, or if you are going to have some kind of process to refresh your file, maybe you create some sort of virtual machine, and then you're going to have basic, very small minimum resources on that machine. That's fine, but then that's where you could extend it out, where it gives enough time for the file to open up properly, and get everything set up, and then you can kind of go to the actions. So that's a big thing need to know when depending on your hardware, right, from a performance. So again, the usage is very straightforward, very easy. Now let's kind of dig into a little bit more. Let's see. So if we kind of read on this, I think this touches on it. I don't know if it does, if it touches on it or not. I am familiar with it. There it goes. It does touch on it. py-win-auto. So ultimately, this is kind of what it's using. So let's take a look at that package. If we take a look at that, what is py-auto? So ultimately, as you could tell, it's a set of Python modules to automate Microsoft Windows GUIs. Pretty much high level, what this is, it allows you to interact with Microsoft applications to control the start, edit, different things of that nature if you wanted to. It gives you that abilities to do that. And here's kind of a basic example down here. We take a look at it, right? Where you're ultimately starting the notebook pad. As you could tell, very standard, right, on every Windows. Then you're pretty much, you're typing in specific, keys. I'm trying to find a better example. Like, here goes the app open.click. The one example that I saw that was pretty good is, see, like menu selection. You're selected from a specific menu. And again, let me go ahead and open up Notepad, right? We can take a look at it. So just kind of compare to what we're seeing. So we have format, then we have font, right? So exactly what we see here, this is pretty much the command that is being told on where to kind of direct it to. And then you're saying, OK.click, which in this case is font. We're specifying font, OK, click type deal. So a lot of the stuff that you're able to do here, that's where this package comes in right here. So if you want to get into automating certain steps, this is a good one. The one that I have actually used heavily in the past is this guy, py-win32. So this one, you're accessing the Windows COM API. And with that, you're able to kind of interact with Excel, Word, all these other applications as well, to not just with the UI, but actually when it comes to other functionalities. Again, very interesting to use if you're trying to interact with certain Excel files. There's other packages that allow you to do this, but what makes this one very unique in my mind compared to like an OpenPY Excel or something like that is an OpenPY Excel. you're actually creating an XML file, pretty much like an Excel file from scratch. Is what you're doing. Something like this, the PY132, you're actually interacting with real Excel. You're actually interacting with um, Microsoft Excel file that have already been generated, and you're able to access certain cells and certain functionality within there without having to copy that data, put into memory. Because that's kind of what OpenPY does as well. A lot of the activity, you're pretty much reading it, you kind of bring it into memory, you interact with it, and you kind of save it back out. Where with PY132, you're actually just opening up the original file. Then you're able to use the COM API to kind of actually integrate and call certain commands to, let's say, write data to cells or do some other functionality. So it's a pretty cool. It's been around for some years, but either way, the main purpose I was trying to tell you here, that's what the PBIX refresher. It's using that package as well, and that package ultimately what it used for is to interact with Windows applications, GUIs, right? Access the any drop downs, any other, uh, any of the menus, that kind of stuff. You're able to interact with, which is why this works, which is why it's able to control the mouse, point it to the right section to do what it needs to do. So overall, it's very simple. There was nothing complex about this, what we did. It's literally a matter of bringing in and using the PBIX refresher package, and then you're good to go, man. I mean, to refresh. Now, is there a heavy need for it? That just depends on what you're doing. But for me, I would say if you're in a position where you have a Power BI file that you're trying to share with other people, that is where it comes a little bit more handy, especially if they don't have access to open the file. And let's say you're pushing this file out to a SharePoint site, right? It lived in a SharePoint site. And that's kind of where it comes handy, because now people can just open it up, like download it from SharePoint if they want, and run it. And it doesn't matter if they're connecting to the internet or not, or after they downloaded it, they're still connected to the network or access to the database or even connected online. Once they download it, they're offline. They could see all the latest data that had been pushed out there. Because you could have a job that's automated. Let's say they run every 5 a.m. to refresh that data. Then ultimately the copy is being saved to SharePoint for anybody else to download in the future, and they will get the latest data as well. So that's kind of where it becomes a little bit more handy. Man, hopefully this helps out, man. Hopefully this is beneficial, gives you some insight to it if you ever get stuck when it comes to this. Again, give me a thumbs up, follow me. I'll be making some more content. Again, I'm still grinding this out, and hopefully I can help y'all out. And if you have any ideas of certain videos you want me to do, let me know. My programming, I don't just program in Python, JavaScript, some C++, things of that nature. Not C++, my bad. C#. I don't know why I said C++, but I was just thinking of it because I was actually thinking about learning it. Nevertheless, C#, Dart, just kind of name a few. But my main language is Python. Man, I enjoy it. I love it. And that's kind of what I'm going to make my YouTube videos mainly focus on the Python. Going to be narrowed down on Python. That's where I've been using Python for some years. That's where my strengths is at. So anything that you have Python related, let me know. Email me, send me a comment, whatever it may be. And yeah, I may make a video on it. So man, thanks for watching. Again, follow, hit the like button, and peace.